3 months into the role, walk into the room for our general sales meeting for the very first time, probably 300 people in the room. I was the only female.
Don't ever reject a cold call, and don't ever be afraid to make a cold call.
One of the greatest pieces of advice that I ever got from an old friend was just always show up. You could get there and not like it. You could get there and not be successful, but just go. If you don't go, you lose out automatically.
You've got to give opportunities and throw them into the fire and see how they do, because that sink or swim mentality oftentimes brings about the best in people.
Yeah. This industry is about passion, but it starts with resilience and resistance.
You don't get what you don't ask for.
Being in sales, either your favorite cold call, opener, sales pitch, elevator pitch, what is your favorite way to approach that situation? Welcome to the Share the Lohr podcast by J. Lohr Vineyards and Wines, where we take you behind the scenes over a glass of wine. Let's uncork and dive in. My name is Josh Baldovino. I'm the marketing manager here at J. Lohr, joined alongside Cynthia Lohr, who is Chief Brand Officer and co-owner. And then we have the pleasure of speaking with VP of Sales from BreakThru, Kristen Demergian. And clearly, you made an impact. We talked about both of your journeys in the wine industry, where you started, how you got to rise to the ranks to where you are today. And then we dropped in tactical nuggets for career advancements, whether you're on the sales side or on the marketing side. You don't want to miss this episode. Kristen, cheers. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to release this in March. We have our J. Lohr Women campaign that we do in March. BreakThru has the Women Who Break Through program. But before we dive into it, Kristen, what is a quick origin story and how did you get to be the superpower that you are today?
Well, I credit my mother first. We'll start there. From San Diego. Oh, you meant the alcohol side of the business. Okay, we'll start in New York. Okay. So I was midway through my PhD and walked into the lab one day and decided I didn't really want to do that. So got a one-way ticket to New York City, landed in New York City, and started in distribution. So cut my teeth in distribution, running the streets of New York, 23rd to 53rd, river to river, no matter what the temperature was outside or what the climate was, and eventually got into actually the beer side of things. So started with Allagash, which is a small brewery up in Portland, Maine. They do a wheat beer that if you have not had is delicious. And then moved over to Firestone Walker, which is the creator of 805. So spent almost 8 years with them in Boston and then Southern California and then the Central Coast, but started as a territory manager and worked my way all the way up to VP of Sales. And then I decided, since I was drinking wine 99.999% of the time and spirits, that maybe I should make the jump to being a partner with somebody that was more wine and spirits oriented, but also had beer in the portfolio. So I ended up at BreakThru.
I love that so much. And I knew about your extensive tenured sales career, but I forgot that you're also an academic. So can you fill us in on that side of things as well? Because that's very exciting to have someone of your educational aspirations on the sales side of things too, which I'm sure is just an absolutely tremendous asset.
Well, you'd think so, but I don't know how I got through my undergrad, honestly. I don't think I purchased a single textbook while I was at UC Berkeley and still managed to come out with a 4.9. So I did really well at attending parties. I did exceptional at socializations. But after that, my dad at the time was a huge inspiration. He was a physical therapist and dealt a lot with physiology, anatomy. I'd spent a great deal of time in his labs and kind of decided to go that direction and pursue biomechanics. So spent a great deal of time at USC researching tendons and collagen and their regeneration. And then I really enjoyed the research part of things. I really enjoyed learning and discovering, and then had to write things and present things, and it all went down here from there.
I love that. So does your research and analytical mind then must portray well in sales, right?
It does. It gives me a natural understanding of just industry trends, forecasting, all of the things that go into, especially as you start to move into the higher levels of leadership when you're analyzing P&L and understanding EBITDA and all those fun things that we get to do every single day.
Absolutely.
It did give me the heads up from that perspective because I had such a background in analytics.
Okay, terrific.
I mean, you take the soft skills from the college extracurriculars, we'll call that, which are important to sales, and then the analytical side makes the best salesperson.
Definitely.
And then I know both our brands and of course BreakThru have a program, especially geared towards women leadership. So tell me, actually, Cynthia, I don't know if I've ever heard it from you for the J. Lohr Women campaign. What was the inception behind that?
Oh, well, thank you for that great question because it does go way back. And it's a great origin story, if you will, that starts out in 2007.
Okay.
Actually, when Deborah Brenner herself, the founder and CEO, executive director of Women of the Vine and Spirits, cold called me at the wine center and said, I just wrote a book. It's called Women of the Vine. And I portray women in Napa, Sonoma, and Healdsburg who are vintners, growers, winemakers, and women in the field. And would you hold a book signing party for me? And I said, I like you already. I love the fact that you picked up the phone and that you reached out. But I've been thumbing through your book and I don't see anyone south of the North Bay featured. So I gave her a bit of a hard time. But we did end up holding the book signing party to great celebration because it really was a very pivotal time when the stories about women in the industry were not yet truly coming forward. So Deborah used her book as a springboard to galvanize all of what we now get to enjoy as Women of the Vine and Spirits corporate members, all of the relationships, all of the trends, all of the important conversations. And so when Women of the Vine and Spirits, the actual symposium and membership group actually came to be 10 years ago, there were other pathways that led up to that, but it was a natural outgrowth of Deborah and I following one another's paths for so many years that had us invest as almost a foundational partner, joining the likes of many others to prosper this initiative, this mission to advance women in the fields of wine and now spirits forward. And just to see the growth in these recent years has been phenomenal. And so I feel like both Women of the Vine and Spirits being the instigator for hashtag #JLohrWomen, which I think we're in about our 7th or 8th year now, we looked at what are the differentiators of J. Lohr as a family-owned and operated business against others, and certainly recognizing that we have a winemaker of white wine, Kristen Barnheisel, and then myself as co-owner already catapulted us into a different level of female leadership. And then you look at the folks like VP Marketing Rhonda Motil or VP National Accounts and E-commerce Rita DeLillo, our VP International Sales, Sean Zeleny. We recognized that not only do we have stories to tell, but we have tremendous opportunity to inspire, mentor, and help change the shape of the industry through our internal leadership. And so that was the genesis behind hashtag #JLohrWomen. It evolved into a campaign and has taken many shapes and forms over the last number of years.
I love that it started as a community and a cold call at that.
Yeah, exactly. The power of a cold call. Don't ever reject a cold call and don't ever be afraid to make a cold call.
Oh, okay. I'm going to plant a question that's not on this list. But since I have two powerhouses with VP of Sales, and of course, Cynthia with yours, if you guys think about this, and I'll ask at the end, but if you have a perfect cold call strategy, or if you had a line that always worked for you as you went in, because I'm sure we have a lot of trade folks, keep that on the back of the mind.
Love that.
Kristen, I'm going to go to you now with the Women Who Break Through program. What was the origin of that program, and what's the hopes and goals of it?
I have to say, coming from an environment in beer where there were a lot of organic efforts in small communities to develop support for women, but there wasn't a big entity that I think had really taken hold in terms of supporting women in the industry, at least while I was part of it. And when I joined BreakThru, orientation, day one, they're going through all the groups that BreakThru offers you can identify with. And I saw Women at BreakThru. And so I, of course, day one signed up and I get this email and they do a feature on me. And I thought, well, that's the coolest thing ever. And what I can tell you is that being part of the organization makes you feel like being part of something bigger. And that's what I think is most important for things like this, whether it's Women Who Break Through or it's OLA or it's any of the groups that BreakThru has invested in. It's about being part of something bigger than yourselves. And whether you're a vice president of sales or you're a rep or you're a merchandiser or you're in the warehouse, that is what is most important. It doesn't matter what part of BreakThru you're in. you want to feel part of something that is larger and that is contributing on a greater level. There's so much opportunity within the community for us to grow as women and support women that are starting today, tomorrow, started 5 years ago, think they're too young to be a manager, think they're not talented enough to be a manager, think they're not talented enough to be a vice president, or that they're too young, or that they don't have the right skill set. We have to speak to that environment and give them the platform to learn and to have a voice. Otherwise, they're just going to get lost in the system, and that's the last thing we want.
I love what you said about recognizing that employees can be part of something bigger. And that to me always maps back to purpose. What are the core values that drive your business forward and that frankly keep you still relevant and important in challenging times? Because it's really about that greater good, the benefit, the service that we all provide in our businesses that carry us through challenging times. And so I love that whole idea of, just mapping to something bigger, knowing that it's there and knowing that it's there to collaborate and co-create and build upon, so that if someone in your business comes to you with a great idea, it can be looked at being implemented. And that's something that for us, when we had the idea to take #JLohrWomen, which had been really focused on women in our business, and to take it further and look at, okay, how can we recognize the impact and accomplishments of women in our business, but also bring their male direct reports or their leaders or their managers into the conversation to recognize and elaborate on the impact that these women are having. That's when the conversation became even more values driven and larger and more part of the fabric of being a family owned and operated business, was to see just how everyone rallied behind, how can we feature the male allies who are behind the women? And I think what we had the call to action, Josh and Rhonda put it out there. We're going to pivot a little bit with #JLohrWomen and turn it into a more robust campaign. And by the way, we're going to feature men in our collateral and our point of sale, et cetera. We had about a quarter of our company raise their hand, and probably about, correct me if I'm wrong, it was almost like a third of those were men. Between a quarter and a third were men who wanted to come forward, show up, share their stories for #JLohrWomen. So it was really, really powerful.
Yeah, there's obviously, I'll speak to marketing because, yes, I report to Rhonda Motil, who's VP of marketing, and she's the best boss I've ever had. So I don't know why anyone else on the market team would not want to raise their hands. But I guess to that, can we cheers really fast?
Yes.
Again.
Thank you,
Oh, gadget arms.
Josh.
And so this is our 2023 J. Lohr Arroyo Vista Chardonnay, which is our reserve tier Chardonnay, which I'm sure you've had before.
Many of time.
Oh, good.
Usually
I'm
on
happy to hear
Saturdays.
that. I'm happy to hear that.
And for those who can't taste with us right now, but if you're tasting, whether through listening to the podcast or on YouTube, this is the reserve level tier, our most rich, our most luxurious Chardonnay.
Indeed. I wish Kristen Barnheisel, winemaker of white wine, were with us right now to taste with us and to elucidate the layers of flavor. She's actually traveling right now, which is fabulous. She studied Italian, and so she's spending a little time in Italy right now. But what we have noticed over her time with us is that the nuance in our white wines over the now 8 years that she's been with us have become even more aromatic and refined and delicate. So this is just another expression of that just really layered, classic Burgundian style Chardonnay that is so beautifully balanced and rich and robust, as you shared, but just super, super delicious. So I'm so glad that we decided to feature this wine as part of our time together.
I feel like I had to. Chris, I got one wine question, then we'll go back into the topic. What is your favorite pairing with Chardonnay?
Oh, I was just going to ask you the same thing about food. So, obviously you're going to go fish.
Okay.
But this has such a beautiful quality to it and such a high flavor potential that if you go too light on a profile, the wine is going to overpower your fish. So stereotypically, I like to do something that's got like a high butter acidity to it, the white wine reduction, and then you do it over a little bit more of an aggressive profile, like a halibut. So. I'm not the perfect
Solid.
pairer with wine, by the way. I would usually
sounds
leave that.
perfect to me.
I would usually leave that up to my cork dork, Chris Coon, but he's not here today. So
I like your mention of acidity. I think that's really natural and normal. And I love to cook at home. And recently I've been going toward cleaner sauces. So I like lemon juice and capers and just a little bit of garlic or butter, what have you. And I think that whether chicken or fish or shellfish or what have you, this is such a beautiful pairing. And so now I'm going to throw it back on you, Josh. What would you enjoy at home with Arroyo Vista Chardonnay?
Today, right now, what I'm thinking of, instead of ordering the salad that I ordered for lunch after this, a white sauce pasta
Ooh.
would be, especially with it being really rich and buttery, I think would be perfect.
Butter on butter seems to be a perfect
I know,
pair.
right, exactly.
Yeah, so-
Okay, so switching back gears, back into the topic at hand. Kristen, you mentioned your background. I'm curious, was there a specific moment in time where you realized that there weren't as many women in the room that you thought?
Yeah, this will always stick out in my mind. So keeping in mind, once again, that I started in distribution in New York City almost 20 years ago. And I, at that period of time, had been working in a bar, loved the dynamics of brewing and the science that went behind it, obviously, with my background. And so I had been teaching beer courses, things like that, and then figured out that, hey, there's an opportunity where you can sell alcohol. That seems great. I've never sold before, so we'll figure that part out later. Applied at the distributor, got the job, 3 months into the role, walk into the room for our general sales meeting for the very first time, probably 300 people in the room. I was the only female. Outside of the person that
300.
hired me, which was the head of HR at the time. And it was I had never stopped to consider that there might not be another female because it just didn't seem realistic to me until I looked around the room and was like, well, that's strange, especially having come from education where it was a very balanced field. And from that moment, knew that I would become part of an ethos that would grow females in the industry. And whether that's wine, whether that's beer, whether that's spirits, it became important to me to support anyone that came into the field that wanted to grow, that wanted to be part of the industry and wanted to be comfortable in it as well.
Which is so interesting because when you think of sales and you think of sales strategy, you think of the value of the combination of soft skills and hard skills and just how that all plays out, and certainly not gender typecasting, but you think about women having such a proclivity toward these incredible relationships. And I look at our own sales force and I look at the men and women who are successful. It just seems sales is natural, and sales leadership would be very, very natural. I'm thrilled to hear of your commitment to advancing women in sales in wine and spirits, because it takes someone like you that has that passion and that understanding where you said why would you think anything else until you step into a room? Yet there's so much opportunity.
Agreed. And one of the things that I've always coached people on, especially as they're working through their career, is that many have often asked, what's been your greatest struggle as being a female in the industry? And I said, well, it's really not being a female. Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
It's really full transparency. Without heels, you threw me in the pool right now, I'd come out 100 pounds soaking wet. Without heels, I'm barely 5 feet tall. It is actually the fact that if I don't have heels on, I am so small that it looks like bring your daughter to work day. So it's actually sometimes less about being a female that's been challenging. It's more that I'm so small that I've often gotten lost in a room. So I've learned as a salesperson how to coach people on being just bigger and confident. Because when you walk into a room, despite your size, despite your gender, despite whatever it might be, if you walk in with confidence, you are already selling. And that's the most important part.
That's so well said. Thank you for sharing that with us. Beautifully said.
How about you, Cynthia? Was there a time your family grew up kind of creating the business, and so I'm sure you have a slightly different perspective than Kristen. Was there a moment when you said, wow, there's not as many women?
Oh my goodness. Well, let's see. So I had my first tour through the winery, if you will, in the late 80s after school. And back then I was working in both what we called back then the quality control lab and the tasting room. So trying to get my feet wet. And we were fortunate that we actually had a fair number of women here in San Jose already. So that never really hit me. And I always felt that there was opportunity because the women in our the woman in our lab, running the lab at the time, Annette, female. And for a spell, we had a female assistant winemaker. So I never saw those limits, but later as I got more deeply into the industry and my second pass through, when I came back in 2002, I had been in tech for over a decade and was afforded just tremendous autonomy and responsibility, and was able to launch companies and take them public and see companies through acquisition. And so when I came back on board, that's when I started to see that, women are not afforded the same level of responsibility. We have to work harder to earn credibility. And so that was a big shaping force. I never lacked confidence because I've always been a self-starter and I've always just gone for it. But as I started to look at any limitations around me in the industry at large, it made me double down on what can I do to both mentor others, but also advance women in the industry. And that feels very natural to me. I was at an event yesterday called Mentorship Monday through Silicon Valley Business Journal, and they sold out 200 mentee tickets, and it happens all over the country, and this is the largest that they've ever had. And I thought to myself, there's a real need for this right now, and we can't do more to support other women as they look to advance their careers regardless of industry. But it's about creating those connections and creating those safe spaces so that we can share best practices or catch the ear of someone like you who's going to say, here's what you need to do in order to get to that next level, or here's something you might want to think about to fortify your discussions with your direct manager.
Okay, so then going into the here's what you should do.
Oh,
Let's talk about mentors.
Yeah.
Kristen, did you have a mentor that helped you through your career?
I didn't, and it's part of the reason why I strive to be better, because I've shot through the dark on my own. And there's been a lot of people that have given me advice along the way, and some of it I have taken, and some of it I haven't. Recently, I wrote about it, and I write these emails every Monday. And one of the greatest pieces of advice that I ever got from an old friend was just always show up, and that stuck with me my whole life. Like, just show up. You could get there and not like it. You could get there and not be successful, but just go. Like, if you don't go, you lose out automatically. So. But it's given me the perspective of wanting to be better for that next generation that's coming up now, and for people that are wanting to grow their career and people that want to be a bigger part of the industry. Because we may be in a weird time right now in the industry. I think nobody denies that. We're in unprecedented times right now. But we're resilient. This industry is resilient. And so there's going to be a next generation and a generation after that and a generation after that. And if I can influence just a smidgen, just a crack, and then make the next generation better, then we're all in a better place. We're in a good place. So
love that you're talking about the cyclical nature of our industry, because I too believe that we're going to come around. We're going to bounce back, and we're heavily reliant on the folks like Josh and our colleagues to carry us through to that next wave. But such a great question, and I think you were going to ask me that question.
Yes, Cynthia. So, I mean, who is your mentor?
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, so my father's always been a tremendous source of inspiration because, as you know, he's so astute and intelligent and laser focused that we would all sit around the dinner table and he would talk about his businesses and we would listen intently so that we could ask a question. so he's always been just a tremendous inspiration and guidepost and a mentor in a way. I have a pretty unstoppable curiosity. And I think that comes from my father, and it's allowed me to branch off and do many different things that I think impact the wine industry. But so several things. I feel like I have always drawn inspiration from my colleagues and from women in the industry, and men as well. But this whole mentor-mentee relationship can be quite fluid. And so as I was participating in Mentor Monday yesterday, I was looking at the women that I was speaking with, and I felt I'm really learning as much as well. So I feel like it's the community of advocates and leaders and passionate folks in our industry who I think create that fluid relationship. But I did have one woman who stands out as pivotal in my mind at a time when I needed inspiration and mentorship most. And her name is Brenna Bolger. And she founded and ran for many years, I believe it's still alive. It's a strategic marketing communications company here in San Jose called PRX.
Okay.
And I joined, my goodness, in the early 90s. And she saw potential in me, and she made me business development director. And this was at a time when the internet was nascent. So I was launching companies called Internet Made Simple and Internet in a Box. And she threw me into the fire, and I was responsible for bringing on local business. And if it weren't for that degree of faith that I could learn and apply myself and do the job, and just, throw me into the fire, I saw what I was made of. And I think that oftentimes for young women and young men, you've got to give opportunities and throw them into the fire and see how they do, because that sink or swim mentality oftentimes brings about the best in people.
I agree. And then I love your advice too, the just show up. So many times there are all these doors that come in front of you, but if you don't walk through to even just see what's behind them, they'll never know entirely.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get tactical now.
Oh boy.
I gave you a hint of the question before, and so we're talking about how to advance in the industry, how to advance in your careers, VP of Sales, Chief Brand Officer. So I'm going to ask a little variation for each of you. Being in sales, either your favorite cold call opener, sales pitch, elevator pitch. So if a rep's going to go into an account, what is your favorite way to approach that situation?
This goes back to always show up.
Okay.
So I think, and this is the advice that I give anyone that I usually work with at this point, and another piece of great advice. And you spoke about inspiration in this industry. I think there's a degree of passion in our industry that doesn't exist in others, and you find inspiration from everyone and everything for that reason. But when it comes down to cold calling and it comes down to persistence, because especially in the on-premise, it takes an average of 12 calls to get somebody to give you their business.
Yes.
So that comes down to just showing up. The other part of that is, I say this to everyone, is don't leave without a yes. And that doesn't mean a yes to buying a new by the glass. That doesn't mean a yes to taking over 30 share of the menu. Leave with a yes that you can come back. Leave with a yes that you can present wine the next day. Leave with a yes that they're looking for something in a $14 price range. Leave with some sort of yes so that you leave that door open to the next opportunity. Because if you can't get out of that door without a yes, you've left yourself with less potential. My original job in the industry was a new account specialist. So my job to walk into any account anywhere and try and get business. And I was so persistent. I still remember walking into a bar and watching the bar manager hide behind the bar so that I would not talk to him again. And my response was, if you just buy from me, this nonsense will stop and someone else will come and visit you. So there's something to be said, like I said, for always leaving with a yes in combination with just showing up. This industry is about passion, but it starts with resilience and resistance.
That is so brilliant what you just shared, and I thank you for that, because I am going to try that in my next tactical and strategic conversations with folks, because that is just brilliant. For me, I have always operated from the premise of you don't get what you don't ask for. And so you have nothing to lose by putting out there what it is that you're seeking. And as I heard a local San Jose State University president, Dr. Cynthia Lohr speak yesterday as the keynote speaker for this Mentor Monday, she said, you must go in with a level of specificity to get to where you're going. And that will always benefit you, but also make sure that you are doing your homework, that you know how to provide solutions. But that level of specificity toward that yes, I think is really, really key. And then understanding that you're there to be a problem solver. You're there to benefit not only your business, but the business of the accounts that you're there to serve. Why not strive for a win-win for everyone? Because those wins are out there. It takes that creative problem solving and that working for never leaving without a yes, which I think is just absolutely brilliant. And because that's new to me, you can tell that I am not a natural salesperson, but I will use that moving forward for sure. So
I practice on my husband.
You got him to say yes, so. Or I guess he got you to say yes, maybe.
Yes. yes. Or did you get him to say yes?
He got me to say okay.
Sure. Yeah, for me I guess the story, and Cynthia, I'm curious to see if you remember this now. From my interview for this position, when you talk about specificity, I remember, so at the time I was in advertising sales, and a portion of this job is media buying. So now flipping the script a little bit on that side. I remember coming into the interview with the family, and I brought in reports of what I can find in terms of website metrics, the ad sets you guys were doing, and I laid that all out on the first interview with the family.
Yes.
And I was trying to get as specific as, okay, if I was the media buyer, here's exactly how I would place it, and here's what I think is working.
Yes.
And to just find what the next question is of, hey, can we at least just have a follow-up conversation about what you're doing now on the interview, almost already pitching the plan versus pitching me.
Absolutely. You came prepared. You had your own personal playbook at play, and that was brilliant. And so completely agree. Thank you again for your advanced preparation, because that was the differentiator that said, hey, here's a guy who knows what he's talking about. Let's take a chance on him. And we can have those next conversations about, how can you help us fill the needs that we have? So absolutely.
And I'd say if you're thinking about sales in general, I mean, that was actually my sales playbook. When I was on the ad sales side, it would just go in with, here's your metrics reports. Is this accurate? And I saw a dip here. What happened? And then now that conversation to all the accounts that I was selling into didn't become a sales conversation. It became oh, really? You saw this?
Yeah.
And I think even now with AI and everything online, there are so many different tools that if you just take a little bit of time to learn.
Absolutely. It's almost as if we're in the helping profession. It's like we're through everything that we all do, we are here to help our accounts, help our businesses, help us all realize our goals, and taking that extra step to say, how can I support you? How can I help you? Here's what I have found. So, yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
Sign me up.
I think I say at least 12 times a day, how can I help?
Oh my gosh, I believe it.
That's how you answer the phone. Just
Yeah.
how you help. So before we dive into the looking ahead, I know thank you for flying out here, by the way.
Oh, my pleasure.
And so this next one, this is our 2022 J. Lohr Jester Syrah. Which I know is not distributed.
It is not.
But since, again, you're visiting us on our home turf, we have some winery exclusives, and our Jester line is one of them. Cynthia, you want to give the quick backstory on Jester?
Absolutely. So, 15 years ago or more, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, 18 years ago, our sales leadership at the time said, what do we think about doing a winery exclusive tier that would be, a way to thank guests, visitors to our wine centers, et cetera, and reward club members as well. And so the J. Lohr Jester tier was born. We started with stature in honor of Jerry's height, but stature was taken, and so we just went with it and trademarked J. Lohr Jester as a token of appreciation for our wine club members and visitors, and reflected that on the back label. Launched with 2007, J. Lohr Jester Mourvedre in 2009. And that was my first sip of Mourvedre from our vineyards, and I fell madly in love. And it aligned me with the tier that I had created and packaged even more. And so to this day, J. Lohr Jester tier remains the winemaker's folly. It's the playground of Rhone meets Rhone blends, etc. And we just have so much fun. The winemakers do such a beautiful job. And this J. Lohr Jester, notwithstanding, just a really rich, robust expression of Syrah from our vineyards in West Adelaida, and just absolutely scrumptious. What do you find that you like about this wine, Josh? And then Kristen, I'll ask you as well.
Oh, I mean, I love the fruit on this. I love the balance on it. Every time we pour this, say if I'm in Paso and at the tasting room and I hear trade and we pour this for them, like I know, for example, the marketing manager over at PWCA, this is her favorite wine. And she always asks for it. And this is a crowd pleaser. I think the entire Jester tier in itself, too, is just, it's not many people know about it when they find it. and also at the price point, they fall in love with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for sharing it with me, first of
Oh,
all. Cheers.
absolutely.
Cheers.
This is an honor. The fruit on the nose is exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
You could bring me a small fillet cooked medium right now, and I would be quite happy. I may not leave, actually. But the fruit quality in this is bar none some of the most beautiful I've seen on a Syrah in a long time. So thank you for sharing. I really feel very privileged.
Well, I don't know if I saw steak on your lunch order, but
I too did not order correctly based on the wine options that were ahead of it. So
no worries. Okay, so changing gears back to looking ahead. So curious, I know that the industry is in an interesting time right now. So as we, whether it be collectively, with our own individual teams, Kristen, for you, how do you see the rest of your team moving forward now for the remainder of the year and for the industry?
I think this goes back to resilience. I think, like I said, that the industry is going to see challenging times. If you've been in it for the last 20, 25 years, you've seen it before. This is a little different, I think, than we've seen in the past. But nonetheless, I remain committed to the fact that we will get through it. And this next generation is eventually going to have to pay a home loan, and they're going to turn to something that tastes delicious to get them through it. So, but with that, and circling this all kind of back to how, either women being empowered to ask for what they want, and then B, women who break through, is that one of the great things about being part of an organization like BreakThru, and then part of an organization like Women Who Break Through, and similar for Lohr, is that you get the opportunity to be presented with people all over the nation. So you recognize not only are we in California going through struggles, but they're going through struggles in Colorado. They're going through struggles in Florida. We're not alone. And or if there are opportunities to grow and to seek things, you can. You know people, you've connected with people. And that in all of this that we've really discussed about brings it all together, is that not only are you part of something that's bigger, where there are other people that are going through tough times, but there's also people there to tell you they've seen it before, they've gotten through it, so stay strong. And that is the beauty of bringing it all the way back, part of something bigger than yourself. So
That's very, very well said. I look at it too as cyclical, and there are economic and political patterns and cycles that will show us through analysis that while we're facing this headwinds right now, that based on previous administrative regime changes, that we will come back around. So I'm steadfastly holding on to that. But from the standpoint of the kind of inflection point that we're at right now, you see and you understand that investments in women's advancement toward greater positions of leadership actually significantly impacts the bottom line. And there has been many reports and data points that support that, and even at the board level. So I think that while we're in these uncertain times, you look toward the fact that what women bring to the table, both in soft and hard skills, and from the standpoint of all of the initiatives that are underway in our respective businesses, we will better our industry as a result of having more women in positions of leadership. So I think we're working to codify that and to demonstrate the metrics that align with that thinking, because that's what's going to prosper this next generation, is charting the pathways for success for young women and young men, but also hearkening back to why wine exists in the first place. Wine has been around for centuries as that social lubricant that underscores great times and great moments and marking milestones. And once we realize that that's what wine is, and spirits too, and beer too, for that matter, it is what we also desperately need right now, is this feeling of connection that happens naturally, that happens over breaking bread, sharing a glass. That's what's going to get us through these challenging times. And so I think we're holding on to that as the vision for resilience. As you mentioned, we are, as an industry, we're incredibly resilient. Farmers are resilient, and ag folks are resilient. We will get through, and we will come back to what it is that we're all here for in the first place, and that is for our family-owned business to make the best possible wines that we can from our chosen appellations and to share this goodness with folks in the hopes of enhancing lives, just as you're doing in your business as well.
I love that. So persistence, resiliency, common theme,
Yeah.
Patience.
patience.
Mhm.
Okay, I want to ask one last question before we end it off. And so for the young woman, the young man who's coming into the industry, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
I think for the majority of people, you kind of fall into the industry unless you grew up in the family and in the vineyards and things like that. And even you tried to escape for a minute. you fall into it and then you fall in love with it. And so my suggestion would always be continue to work hard, show up every day, enjoy what you do, because this is an industry where we get to enjoy what we do. Well, I'm sitting here with you guys today, sipping on beautiful wine as part of my commitment to support the industry. And that's you don't get to do that if you're selling printers. So it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, but it comes with the ability to work hard, to show up, and to continue to support each other within the organizations.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that. I love so much about the just showing up, because when you show up, you make yourself open to receiving that which is going to come your way. And so a couple of things that come to mind for me, that piece of advice is raise your hand. Raise your hand, because that's how new opportunities for growth come professionally and personally. And, of course, ask questions, but don't be afraid to put yourself in positions where you are in a growth mindset or uncomfortable, because that's how growth occurs. It's that whole notion of throw them into the fire and see what happens. You will quickly learn what your threshold for tolerance is for difficulty, but at least you're growing in that process. Because I think one thing that I have always been against is complacency. I never want to be complacent. I always want to indulge my curiosity and always be growing and helping other people grow. And there are some prerequisites that come with that growth mindset, as we've all identified here today.
yeah, being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yep.
I love that. It's very, very practical for both of you. So
Yeah.
thank you. So if people want to learn more about the Women Who Break Through program, how can they find more information about that?
Well, it's an internal program for BreakThru, but if you're with BreakThru, I can't recommend enough reaching out to Anna, who's been awesome through this process. It's been great to get to know her a little bit more, but getting involved. And that can be as little as getting on a guest speaker and listening to somebody talk about their career growth and what they did, and or give advice on what's happening in the industry and where they see the industry going. They've been have guest speakers from all over the place. Getting involved in Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which I know is a huge thing for Lohr, so it's a great partnership with you guys. Or just reaching out and saying, hey, I'd like to meet somebody that's in another state and get their perspective of what's going on. It can be as great as being avid in a group, and as small as just reaching out and say, I'd like to talk to somebody.
That's such a strong support program for your internal folks. So amazing. On the Lohr side, I know you can go and find our Lohr Women program on our website. I'll also leave that link down below so that way you can just go ahead and click that. But Cynthia, any other call to actions you want to give to the viewers?
Fabulous call to action. If you happen to be in California and in Paso Robles on March 11th, we are celebrating at the Lohr Paso Robles Wine Center the 10th anniversary of Women of the Vine and Spirits, and talking about the resources for empowerment that women and men can sign on to, both through Women of the Vine and Spirits, but also generally available in their communities and in their constellation of friendship groups or what have you. We want to talk about really what can women and men do to empower themselves in their career journey right now with low-hanging fruit resources. And then, of course, that 10-year anniversary for Women of the Vine and Spirits. So that's 2 to 4 p.m. on March 11th.
Okay. And of course, I will leave that link down below. And if you were in the industry, thinking about getting into the industry, and you found this episode valuable at all, please make sure to like and share this with anyone else you think would find value. They gave a mini masterclass of how to succeed in sales on the marketing side, and it was just so great to hear both of your guys' stories. So I appreciate you both being on. Kristen, for coming out and joining us on the episode.
Thank you for having me. So
Love it.
to keep this consistency up of seeing each other.
Absolutely.
We will. Well, cheers, everybody.
Thank you,
Cheers, yeah.
Kristen. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
And
Cheers
thank
to
you
the
all.
Cheers.
viewers.
Cheers.